Because the death of most startups isn't because they don't get their tech to work or their competition out-executes them. The death of most startups is indifference. They fail to launch because nobody cares. So I know a lot of you are here because you're trying to figure out what's next and what the next big thing is going to be. And that's great because that's my job. So I want to share a tool that I use when I'm trying to figure out what's next. And it's this idea of product zeitgeist fit. So product zeitgeist fit is when the product somebody is building is resonating with the mood of the times. It's in the moment, it's in the zeitgeist. And it's important because that helps answer this kind of age-old question about why some things, especially in consumer tech, just seem to work, and other things just don't. Why something that seems really weird and awkward, like letting a total stranger sleep in your house, can become this global phenomenon, while something that seems really clever, like a private social network, just doesn't. It can also help explain why something that blew up in a bad way in one era, like online pet food delivery, can blow up in a really good way 15 years later. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but one underappreciated factor that has nothing to do with tech trends or the will of the founder or any of the common tropes you'll hear is simply whether it has product zeitgeist fit, whether the product is resonating with the mood of the times. It's a cheat code for startup success and for spotting what's next. Because when you have product zeitgeist fit, the product is resonating not because it's better, that's product market fit. It's resonating because it's connecting with something extremely culturally relevant at that exact moment in time for that exact part of the world. It's got a line on something emotional, not just functional. And it turns out the best way to see the future isn't to look for what's working, it's to look for what isn't working, but people still really care about. The things that are broken and terrible and frustrating, but still inspiring energy and enthusiasm. The things that are sitting in the zeitgeist. That's what can help you see the future. And if you're a founder, it can help you build it. And here's how. The holy grail for startups is mainstream adoption and product market fit, crossing the chasm from these weirdo early adopters into all the normal people. But how do you get here? How do you get to those weirdo early adopters? Because the death of most startups isn't because they don't get their tech to work or their competition out-executes them. The death of most startups is indifference. They fail to launch because nobody cares. Not users or employees, not investors, certainly not the media, nobody. It's death by 1,000 shrugs. But product zeitgeist fit is what gives you a chance. It gives you the momentum and energy and enthusiasm when you need it the most. And because it always happens right here at this moment, when you see it, it kind of feels like magic. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't the end of the story, this is the beginning of it. You still need to cross the chasm into the mainstream and product market fit and functional use case and a defensible business model and all of that stuff. But finding product zeitgeist fit is like getting 1,000 extra lives as you try to play your way to product market fit. Because when you're riding the zeitgeist, you're able to catalyze energy from the 4 forces you really need. Your first users, your early employees, angel and seed investors, and the media that covers these weirdo ideas. When those 4 people care about something and what somebody's doing, impossible things suddenly become possible. Now, I know this can sound really philosophical and theoretical, so I want to walk through some examples of how this is played out in real life and how product zeitgeist fit actually functions. And the first thing I want to walk through is crypto. So in 2009, at the height of the financial crisis, anger at Wall Street and the banks spiked. It entered the zeitgeist like a shot to the arm, and I'm sure a lot of you probably remember this. At the same time, you saw this declining trust in traditional, largely centralized institutions. And this has been something that had been happening for a while, but really started to pick up speed. Then, as the decade went on, we saw this growing momentum to do something about the large platforms and companies that influence so much about our lives and our experiences and our society. Those 3 ideas, frustration with Wall Street, distrust of institutions, and, for lack of a better term, fanger, gave crypto the opening it needed to get started. Gave it the energy, enthusiasm, and excitement, and also funding to get the flywheel spinning. because we've had a lot of attempts at internet money before, but it was only in 2009 that we really found that spark. And if you don't believe me, look at the Genesis block of Bitcoin, the first link in the chain that started everything. The Zeitgeist is etched right into it. In the comments section, Satoshi embedded a message about the financial bailouts. And whether they meant it as a commentary on the financial system and all the injustices, I don't know. But a lot of people interpreted it that way, and that ethos fueled a lot of the energy and excitement around crypto in those early years. But here's the thing about crypto. For the normal people, for the mainstream, it's still not that easy to use. But despite that, people are still using it, people are still building on it, people are still investing in it, and the media is still covering it. Amazingly, it's held product Zeitgeist fit for the better part of a decade, which has given it this insane unfair advantage as it's woven its way towards product market fit. Now, I don't want you to think that this just works for like weird ideas like crypto. This can apply to something as different from crypto as clean meat. Now, like the idea of internet money, the idea of a veggie burger is definitely not a new idea. But it's something that's found a renewed enthusiasm in the last couple of years, which we can unpack. So on the one side, you've seen this growing urgency to do something about climate change within a certain generation and a certain group of people. And this has largely trickled down to the kind of individual level, and it's inevitably led to this conversation about the Western diet and its impact on the problem. And at the same time, you've seen this kind of moral and ethical issues with industrial farming kind of barrel their way into the zeitgeist. And for a bunch of people, it's been kind of disturbing. Now, those two ideas, industrial farming and climate change, have given clean meat and the companies that are producing it the spark of energy they've needed to really help this idea take off this time. And again, you don't have to believe me. Ask the founder of Impossible Foods why they started it. The zeitgeist led them right there. Has anybody tried one of these burgers? I mean, some of them are okay, but some of them are just still disgusting. But despite that, people are still trying to buy them. People are still working on it. People are still funding it. Big companies are still trying to partner with them. It's not better than meat yet, but it's got a great chance to get there thanks to the product Zeitgeist fit. The third idea, and again, this one's very different from the other two, is the idea of income share agreements. So for those of you who don't know, income share agreements, or ISAs, are this financial instrument where someone, usually a student, gets something, usually tuition, in exchange for a share of their income going forward. Now, like internet money and veggie burgers, this is not a new idea, but it's something that seems to have found its moment, which we can unpack. So on the one side, you've seen the kind of explosion of student debt that's sloshing its way through our system, and this has started to dominate conversations across traditional and social media. It's even started to embed itself in our politics. At the same time, you've seen this declining trust in traditional academic institutions, and this gets supercharged with every admissions scandal or replication scandal, or even just last week, there was another marketing scandal. These two ideas, distrust of academic institutions and overwhelming student debt, have given ISAs and the companies and schools using them the lift they need to help this idea take off this time. And again, there's a lot of things still to work out around consumer protections and regulation and returns to investors. But despite that, people are still working on it. People are still talking about it. People are still using them. People are still trying to make it a thing. I don't know if it has product market fit just yet, but thanks to this, it's got a really great chance to get there. And these are just a few examples. There's all kinds of things that are bubbling up in the zeitgeist today that really talented founders are building on top of. Whether it's privacy products or frustration with the attention economy and ad-based business models, whether it's like Marie Kondo and the decluttering of life or what humane tech and a new social network might look like, the founders that are building on top of these ideas all have that same insanely unfair advantage today. And today is important, because just because something like a private social network didn't work 8 years ago, that definitely doesn't mean it couldn't work today. Now, we've talked a little bit about what product Zeitgeist fit is and why I think it's important, but I also want to share how you can spot it in the wild. And there's 4 tests that I use. The first is what my partner Chris Dixon calls nerd heat. And this is the idea that the most talented, hardest working, most in-demand people, the product managers and engineers and data scientists, they're intrigued by it. They're working on it. they're excited by it. They're using it, they're trying to make it a thing. Because if they are, there's a really good chance that eventually they'll make it happen. The second is what I call the despite test. People are using it despite the fact that it's not the best thing out there, despite the fact that it's kind of clunky, despite the fact that in some cases it's just straight terrible. If they are, that's a sign that it's got a line on something emotional, not just functional, and that's a great signal for product Zeitgeist fit. The third is the t-shirt test. And this one's about association. If people are wearing t-shirts or hats or putting stickers on their laptops, people that have no connection with the company or the project in any way, that's a sign that it's as much a movement as a company, and that's a great sign for product Zeitgeist fit. And the last is the eyebrow test. Things that have product Zeitgeist fit often feel misunderstood or controversial in the early days. At first blush, they raise a lot of eyebrows. But to the people who have been working on them, they're so clearly really elegant, if temporarily imperfect solutions to really big problems. Now, trying to figure out what has product Zeitgeist fit is hard enough. Trying to figure out what's going to enter the Zeitgeist is like voodoo and probably unexplainable, and I'm not even going to try to do it. But there are three things that I've noticed about what does enter the Zeitgeist. And I think it has an important implication for innovation. These things tend to be generational, they're reactionary, and they usually organize around a really compelling villain. And that means that the Zeitgeist is really dynamic, and that's why there's always going to be an opening for innovators and disruptors, especially in consumer tech. Because 2009 feels really different from 2019. So despite all the talk of unbeatable incumbents and ossification, I'm optimistic about the next generation. And because we always seem to react against the unintended consequences and excesses and blind spots of the previous generation, if you live long enough, you probably become the thing that drives the next wave of product Zeitgeist fit and ultimately the next big thing. So that's why if you're trying to figure out what the future looks like, look for product Zeitgeist fit. Look for the things that are broken and terrible, but people still really care about. Look for the four tests: the raised eyebrows, the t-shirts, the nerd heat, and people using it despite itself. Look for the things that are reacting against the previous generation. Look for the things that are having their moment, where the product is resonating with the mood of the times. Because ultimately, that's where the future lies. And it's right here at Product Zeitgeist Fit. Thank you.